Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a very special broadcast where tonight we will be showing phase two of our world record attempt for a transaction speed record. I'm your host, Trevor from Tectum. You all know me at this stage, and we've also got our CEO, Russell, as well as Andre and a special guest, Zan. So tonight we will be showing an update, well, an actual new dashboard that is going to be covering all metrics and aspects of our blockchain. And then, of course, last time we showed the TPS speed for the TET token from one wallet to another, where we were able to verify that on the Explorer. So tonight we will be showing a brand new, or tonight Russell will be showing the updated dashboard, and also we will be showing the main event, a record attempt of over 1.3 million transactions per second. But not only that, this time around, we are going to be showing the events per second on the softnote Explorer. So this time around, it's going to be on the softnote Explorer itself. We all know softnote is our main utility, and we want to prove to the world that we can change the passcodes of hundreds, if not thousands, of softnotes. This will be absolutely huge for us because obviously softnote is going to be the ultimate scaling solution for BTC to start off with, as well as other currencies. But of course, BTC is on a massive run at the minute there. The markets are doing extremely well. And we want to show the world that we have the ultimate layer two scaling solution for Bitcoin. We've said it for many months now that the Bitcoin is going to go on a run. It's going to need a scaling solution there to help with its congestion and fees. And tonight we are going to be showcasing that. Right now, Michael Saylor is he is the genius of the world at the minute there. He has made the right moves after everybody ridiculing him for the last 2 years. And we want this to go viral tonight so he can see this. As we all know, he wants scaling tech in order to facilitate all BTC transactions. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Russell himself, and he is going to take it over from here and show the main event of a record attempt.
Thanks, Trevor. Absolutely. And great to be on this call and great to have so many people tuning in on YouTube and on Twitter. And what we wanted to do first, considering the fact that we've had so many new people join our community, is do a brief demonstration of what the softnode does. So as Trevor stated, this time around with regards to our TPS test, we are only testing the transactions of changing a passcode for a softnode. Now, for those that don't know, a softnote is a method for scaling Bitcoin that is completely radical in comparison to all other layer twos. So the majority of layer twos that people are familiar with either create a token that represents Bitcoin, or they try to find a way to send Bitcoin on-chain in a cheaper manner. Now, the softnote actually radically transposes that concept, and it tries to, or it aims to send Bitcoin wallets rather than Bitcoin itself. So a softnote is a serial number and a dynamic passcode that runs on the Tectum blockchain, and the dynamic passcode gives the user access to the encrypted private keys of a Bitcoin wallet in a predetermined denomination that is already filled by Bitcoin. Understandably, that is a lot to take in. Some people who have been in our community for a while are more familiar with that, but what I'm going to do is give a little bit of a brief demonstration as to how the softnode works, the different functionalities of the softnode, and then we will jump into the TPS test so as to demonstrate the speeds that the softnote can attain. So the soft note has two methods of functioning. The first method of functioning is on wallet. So you can take a Tectum soft note, and typically we're utilizing Bitcoin, and you can send it in your wallet, and it will be done instantly without any of the passcode being involved. But one of the greatest benefits of the soft note is that it's actually walletless. And it's the first digital walletless form of Bitcoin. It was CZ himself who said recently that the greatest barrier to entry for most non-crypto users is the crypto wallet. It's too technologically oriented and it's too complicated. Now, the soft node, because theoretically the ownership is all predicated on the change of that dynamic passcode, which functions through zero knowledge proof, to have ownership of a Bitcoin soft node, all you need to do is know the serial number and know the passcode. So to demonstrate this, I have here a serial number and a passcode of a soft note. And in order to utilize it off wallets, I just need to go to softnote.cash, which is the link up here. This is a web page that connects to one of the main Tectum nodes. And as soon as you're on the web page, you'll see numerous functionalities. Now, just as a brief overview, you can fill a soft note. The Tectum token is utilized to mint soft notes. You can mint a pack of soft notes, which are essentially empty Bitcoin wallets with different denominations assigned to them. You can then fill them with a certain amount of Bitcoin, correct to the denomination that's assigned to them. And then that enables you to be able to spend that soft note off wallet. There's the imports button, which allows you to import a soft note directly into your wallet, or you can even send the passcode to your email address if you know that you're utilizing a secure connection. There's a handover, which enables you to send the soft note to another wallet. And again, this is all through the softnote.cash page. So there's great anonymity there. You're not assigning a particular wallet to that transaction. And then you've got the accept function and the burn function, which we'll come to shortly. But in order to pull up the details of your soft node, you need to go to the soft node bill section. So as I stated, I've got a serial number for a soft note that could be obtained through a situation where somebody sends you a soft note. The soft note can be sent over Telegram, WhatsApp Messenger, Facebook Messenger, because again, all ownership is predicated on the basis of owning that passcode. You would then take your serial number and you would paste it into the softnote bill section and you would click search. As soon as you do that, the system will search the blockchain and pull up your softnote. For example, here I've got a 0.01 Bitcoin denominated softnote, and that's about $700 worth of Bitcoin as things currently stand. Now, this is not a token that represents Bitcoin, it's a Bitcoin wallet itself. And to prove that, you can click on proof of balance and it will take you to any native Bitcoin blockchain explorer and you can see that the funds are there. So this is a bona fide Bitcoin wallet with the Taproot protocol running on it, and you can see that the funds are there. Now, to take ownership of this wallet, you need to utilize the passcode. Now, the passcode is anything from 6 digits all the way up to 24 digits, depending on the value of the softnote to ensure that we're avoiding DDoS attacks. And in order to bring this softnote into my possession, I click accept and I input the passcode. Now, as soon as I do, the system is going to ask me to confirm that I am using a secure and stable internet connection. And then I'm able to hit finish, and the finish then records a transaction on the blockchain. Now, the way this functions is the blockchain checks this passcode using zero knowledge proof as a hash. And as long as it matches on the blockchain, a new passcode is generated. That new passcode is then downloaded, and I will receive that in my downloads. Now, this then means I've taken possession of that passcode, and I will be able to change that passcode myself. Now, I'll just stop sharing the screen there to ensure that I can bring the passcode back into my possession. So what I'm doing without sharing screen is I'm taking that serial number and going through the whole process again. That's placing the serial number into the web page, hitting accept, utilizing the latest passcode, and then that passcode enables me to bring that softnote into my possession. Now, one of the great benefits of the softnote functioning this way, and it being a completely novel way of transacting Bitcoin, is you can actually have a HTML link assigned to your softnote. So I can take this link here and I can send it to anybody over any messenger platform. This now means that the softnote is completely borderless. So anybody who has never utilized cryptocurrency before can be sent this soft note, whether it's by a birthday present or just a gift, or if you're paying for an item. And it also means that the soft note is transacting on the Bitcoin blockchain, but utilizing all the security of the Bitcoin, utilizing all the security of the native Bitcoin blockchain, but it's actually transacting on the Tectum blockchain. Now, a lot of people will naturally then ask, if I have my soft node and I've brought it into my possession, what if I want to be able to get the value, the Bitcoin that is on this soft node, into my possession? So I no longer want to be in the layer 2. I want to move over to the layer 1 and I want to utilize the Bitcoin that's there. Now, that simply functions utilizing the burn. So if we hit burn here and I take my latest passcode, if I input that passcode, the process that then takes place is the burning of the soft node, and this ends the life cycle of the soft node. So this process is essentially utilizing the private keys of the bona fide Bitcoin wallet that have been encrypted on the Tectum blockchain, and then those private keys are revealed in a downloaded form. Now, I won't open it because then the private keys will be revealed to all, but I'll show you exactly how the zip works. You open the zip file and you input your previous passcode, and then it will open the text file that will have the private keys in it. And in fact, I am going to open it, and if anybody's quick enough to record visually the whole private key, they can have what's on the soft note, because I'll be very impressed. But there you go. The private key and the public key for that soft note is then displayed in the text file, and you have burnt that Bitcoin soft note. Now, just as a bit of a technological explanation for those that would be interested, when a soft note is minted, that's at the stage when an empty soft note wallet that represents Bitcoin on the native blockchain is created. The private keys are immediately encrypted on the Tectum blockchain and split amongst numerous nodes. That means the security of the Bitcoin blockchain is utilized, but assigned to that private key is a dynamic passcode. That dynamic passcode is the ownership to that soft node. Now, of course, this then creates a huge expansive amount of abilities for what softnode can be utilized for. Because Bitcoin is the safest and most trusted blockchain and cryptocurrency in the world, but it is also one of the slowest, and it's also one of the most expensive to transact. Numerous projects have been looking for ways to be able to scale Bitcoin. And there are numerous cross-border remittance companies within the Web2 world, and those that have to transact between different currencies that have been looking to Bitcoin for a scaling solution. And many people know the problems with the Lightning Network. They know the problems with BTC. And this is the reason why those protocols have never gained traction within the Web2 world and within traditional finance. But if there was a solution that enabled Bitcoin to transact using the same security protocols of Bitcoin, but could be scaled on another blockchain so that the ownership changes within a split second, of course, this would then give the facility for these Web2 companies to start utilizing that protocol. And that's exactly what we've created at Tectum. So within this demonstration, I've showed how that Bitcoin soft node can transact. But of course, for this to be a viable scaling solution, that transaction has to happen in a fast manner and a cheap manner. So the reason why we've decided on this blockchain TPS test to test soft node passcode changes rather than TPS of the Tectum blockchain with regards to tokens is because we believe the greatest solution, at least initially, that the Tectum blockchain brings to the industry is the scaling of Bitcoin. So if we're able to send Bitcoin soft notes, which is bona fide Bitcoin, at 1.3 million transactions or more, based on all the data out there, this would be enough to facilitate the underpinning of all the requirements for cross-border remittances, regardless of currency, whether it's fiat currency or cryptocurrency, that all industries need to transact with at the moment. So what we are going to do is we're going to shortly move on to our TPS test, but what we're also going to be evaluating is the different nodes and the different node structure and our consensus mechanism as to how that functions within the Tectum blockchain. And to touch on the consensus mechanism as I prepare for the TPS test, I'll hand it over to Trevor to talk you through a little bit of how proof of utility functions.
Yeah, thanks, Russell. And obviously, proof of utility is our main consensus mechanism. And before we touch into the proof of utility there, of course, what Russell's after showing there is our soft note there. And one thing I want to touch up on is the use case. We've said it many times before, but it's more relevant than it ever was. The fact that we all know Bitcoin as a layer one is it's slow, it's congested, it's got too many fees involved there. We're now starting to see the fees ramp up on that, and we always wanted to have a layer two solution in order to figure that part out. And for the likes of countries, I've always said it, the likes of countries there where they're dropping their fiat onto the ground, they're trusting something of value, which is Bitcoin. And we're starting to see little pockets here and there, especially El Salvador, in which they're now starting to use Bitcoin as a unit of account, which means that all their goods and services are going to be denominated in Bitcoin. The problem is if you wanted to make a retail transaction, a retail transaction could be a couple of dollars to $20, depending on what you're buying. And of course, if you were to use a layer one solution, there is issues with that, because you're spending more in fees and you're waiting longer for the transaction to take place. If people were to download the softnode wallet, then of course they would be able to issue currency for Bitcoin and by a series of serial numbers and dynamic passcodes. And then of course we can do that at a huge throughput, and it's verified on the blockchain. And that leaves the utility for the world to have. So that's something that's I really do sort of drill home as often as I can there. Now, proof of utility is our novel consensus, and basically it is with our node consensus. And anybody that we've had staking for about 3 months now, and the proof of utility. Oh, just hold on a second there.
Yeah, Trevor, I'll just pick up there. It looks like we've got a couple of technical issues. So proof of utility is a completely new take on proof of work. So one of the major issues when we were evaluating the blockchain space and attempting to refine our consensus mechanism is that the majority of blockchains utilize something similar to proof of stake, whereby finances are the element that predicate your power within voting when it comes to consensus on the blockchain. And of course, Ethereum has moved over to proof of stake, and many auditors and numerous critics have highlighted the fact that if an ETF was to be approved for Ethereum, a huge amount of money could flow into the system. And if the major corporations wanted to take over the blockchain, they could do so by having more than 51% of the Ethereum tokens. Now, Bitcoin, of course, avoids this because it functions on the basis of computing power, and it's highly unlikely, even if all the value that comes in from an ETF was to be more than 51% of the total market cap of Bitcoin, it would be highly unlikely that those companies would also be able to obtain 51% of all the computing power worldwide that is attributed towards the consensus mechanism in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is incredibly safe in that sense. But one of the major issues with the consensus mechanism as it relates to Bitcoin is that it is designed by nature to slow things down. There are complex algorithms that nodes have to solve in order to write a whole block block. And that complexity requires a lot of computing power, but it also requires a lot of time in order to secure the network. So we wanted to create something very similar to proof of work, but ensure that all the work that is required constitutes a greater speed and contributes towards the efficiency of the blockchain. So we came up with proof of utility. And proof of utility is what we refer to as a useful proof of work. And it has four main factors. So a node's score is what gives him the power to vote and have a higher vote ranking. But there are four elements that determine how high his ranking is. The first one is his uptime. So the longer node is connected to a blockchain, not only the more reliable it is, but the higher the score is when it comes to that metric to ensure that he is less likely to try to write fraudulent transactions. The second element is, of course, the speed. That requires computing power to be able to transact at 1.3 million transactions minimum. The third element is the hardware, the capacity to be able to handle a lot of throughput. And the fourth element is the internet connection and the consistency of the speed of the connection that the node has with the blockchain. Now, all four elements are elements of work, and they all contribute to making the system cheaper, faster, and also more secure. Now, because of this, we then have both of the benefits of proof of stake and proof of work. You have all the requirements of computing power to secure it against a 51% attack, even if an ETF was assigned to a token running on a Tectum blockchain. But you also have the efficiency that has enabled us to get to 1.3 million transactions per second. So that's a brief overview of how the consensus mechanism works. But just to give an introduction, we've got Zan McPherson here, who's from UnoRe, representing a auditing company on the call. And Zan, I would love to get your perspective on what Trevor touched on there about Bitcoin, and Michael Saylor recently stating that Bitcoin really isn't a transacting currency. It should be seen as much more of a proof of value or a store of value. Now, from our perspective, we believe that Bitcoin maxis have been pushed into that position because there isn't a viable scaling solution. But it's a hot debate. I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Oh, yeah, well, most definitely. I think you only need to look at the last 120 years, right? Take the US dollar, for example, global reserve currency. It's down 99%. So then you ask the question, is it about wealth preservation? There's people out there. It's at this point, it becomes a sacrifice of time. Every single person on earth right now is sacrificing their time to either obtain knowledge, or they're sacrificing their time to be able to work and fulfill someone else's dream, earn their wage, so on and so forth. The issue and the big dilemma is that you've got a situation where people are earning their wealth and they are losing through a silent tax. Inflation, CPI comes out this morning, 3-4% annually. Obviously, that's not necessarily completely accurate. If you go to the grocery store, I'm in the US currently, and you can see very clearly that things are very difficult for a lot of people, and it's an over-financialized system. Like you touched on at a brilliant point about being quick. Bitcoin slows everything down because nature is not so quick. Everything is steady. It's when you, like anything, everything must, balance is always restored. Everything comes back to the mean. So this everything burns up. You fly too close to the sun, it capitulates. You lend out too much, it's over leveraged. Everything goes wrong, just like we saw in 2021, just like we've seen it many different times throughout history. So the most important thing here is that Bitcoin does represent what people, not only what they want, but what they need. And if we are to grow further as a society, we need secure, immutable, portable, divisible assets, currencies, things that can act as wealth preservative tools, if you will. So gold, silver, they are fantastic, but the obvious issue is you can't travel with those. Like, you can't travel with gold. It's heavy. It's very expensive to store. Bitcoin solves a lot of these problems. And obviously what you guys are doing there with enabling this to scale, that's the one big thing. There's a few things you've touched on. I've seen it from time that I've spent in dealing with KOLs in the macroeconomic space, working with hedge funds. You see it time and time again. People don't, especially in the TradFi space, they don't get crypto so easily. So making it an intuitive UI, for example, helping onboard non-native Web3 users to the Web3 space will enormously improve growth across the board. Unfortunately, is most projects and protocols, they'll ask you, go in the Discord, go and do this. Most people don't know how to do half that stuff, and they don't want to. So it all sort of ties into one thing. It needs, like, the world needs this, and they need what you guys offer. They do need things like alternatives like Bitcoin. But again, it's going to take time before people can sort of start to see the value in these outside of just a profit-making tool. At the moment, there's a lot of this degen sort of vibe, right? It's like the crypto casino. People are in there to make money. You see it all the time. People want the quick return. But now that Bitcoin is where it is currently, it's no longer about a quick return. It is about more of a stable, growth in your wealth. It's preserving wealth. That's what it comes down to. Are you going to work today to ensure that tomorrow you still have what you earned, or are you going to work 9 to 5 every day for from the age of 20 to 65, just so that you can lose 10% a year? No one's interested in that. So Bitcoin provides that hedge against your time, and instead of sacrificing time for money, which is nothing more than a promise to be paid by governments that break many promises at this point. It's a hyperinflationary asset that has proven to do nothing but lose value over time. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is the opposite. It's deflationary, and it puts people's time back in their own hands. And that's what it's all about. So, and that's what we're all about, is ensuring that people, what they invest in, what they have insured. Because quite frankly, without that, it's peace of mind. People view security, they view insurance, all these things as an unnecessary expense. Oh, there's no need spending this because it may not happen to me. The problem is it always does. And when it does, your lifetime, your reputation, your legacy, it's gone. And it's not worth it, quite frankly. It's much more important having that peace to be able to sleep at night, knowing that what you work for is there the next day, and it's going to be there the next day. That's why Bitcoin exists. That's why we like things that help preserve wealth and ensure that stability and security of your assets that you've spent your life, building. So that's my 2 cents.
Absolutely. No, fascinating, Zan. And you touched on the point of the industry having a little bit of a reputation for being degen oriented, and that seems to be growing quite a
100%.
lot. Yeah, based on...
Yeah.
No, go on.
No, well, of course. And that's always going to be the case with any new asset class. Like, you only need to look at something like that so small with such volatility, and now with institutional capital flowing into the industry. Plus, you've got retail investors, and it is sad to see, because a lot of people are getting their faces ripped off. Like, there's a lot of mum and dad investors. You see it now. I've got friends, mates. Oh, I want to get into this. I want to get into this. And unfortunately, people aren't necessarily still seeing it for what it is. A lot of people see it just for the dollars they can make. And yes, you're not going to earn 50% in a day trading, bonds, unless you're leveraged. But, there is obviously enormous upside there, which is the attraction. But over time, people will start to see it's the utility, like you guys mentioned before. It needs to be, people need to start seeing utility, and it's probably still a ways off for most people. But, it's going to happen in time. People need to remember this as well. Like, Bitcoin is, 12 years, 15 years that it's really been in the mainstream, 2008. Like, realistically, and no one knew about it until mid 2015, 2016, 2017 onwards. It's really like we're comparing Bitcoin in 15 years to an asset like gold that has been around for millennia, right? And it's doing pretty well considering. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you believe we can move the industry perception over towards realizing that there are a lot of projects that have utility? I mean, what you do at Unary from an insurance perspective is great, but those insurance policies only work well, and I'm sure your underwriting process only allows utility or good quality projects to be supported. How do we get that message across to Web 2 people who are interested in coming into the space?
Yeah, well, like any business, right? If you put your reputation behind supporting a project that is obviously a rug or is less than reliable, then it's going to damage you, just like if anyone gets hacked or anything along those lines. So the most important thing is going to be getting people to see that this is an industry, right? It's a market. It's more of a free market, and it's less regulated. Hence, the wild moves you see. But it's really going to come down to people starting to realize that there is a lot of money to be made in this industry, predominantly because it's a first mover advantage, right? It's still very early for a lot of people. Like you see, MySpace, all this stuff. Facebook comes out way later, and it produces far greater success. So there's going to be a lot of projects that are still being, being discussed at this point. They're not even coming to fruition. They're just an idea, and they will have massive success over time. But the focus here is now, I think, in order for us to have greater success and more scalable success, projects like what you guys are doing, right? You're scaling a product that people know they need, like Bitcoin, for example. It allows people that decentralization. It gives them the freedom of their wealth, their sovereignty. It restores all of these things, and it makes it useful for them because, quite frankly, Bitcoin, when it's slow, it doesn't, and it's not scalable, it doesn't provide what people need it to. So the more people, the more businesses you can have leveraging that, the more businesses you can have all it takes, go to somewhere you can pay with Bitcoin, El Salvador, Costa Rica, anywhere like this. I've got mates down there going to farmers markets in Costa Rica and San Jose, paying for mangoes with Bitcoin. When you start doing that, you can go to a restaurant, you can pay for all these things. It becomes very, very helpful to seeing the bigger picture. But it's going to take time because at the moment, people still need dollars to be able to pay for their fuel and their food, and so on and so forth. And it's a trust thing. It's people like there's a lot of, it's just over time, like you see it in the game. There was a big movement in the GameFi space a couple of months back or last year, where you were seeing a lot of big players from the likes of TradFi, like Web2 firms, Ubisoft, and so on, Activision, moving over to Web3 play-to-earn gaming companies. Things like that will just gradually happen more and more. You see ex-bankers moving to the DeFi space. It's just a matter of time because anytime something's new, there's always going to be that. It doesn't take much to move the needle when something's fresh, right? So it's just over time, this is without a doubt, it's sort of proven itself. There's a lot of people that say, every 4 years Bitcoin halves, it does this. Well, the reality is it does. It is following that rather consistently. And it's an unusual mix right now of growing institutional capital and interest in Bitcoin. Obviously, you've had the likes of Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy in there loading up and pushing it. And that all helps. But once people start to see what it can actually do, once they start to see that you can do all of these things. There's people that, you can buy flights, you can buy accommodation, you can pay for your groceries, you can, at some point, then why do you need the dollar? Like that's what the question becomes after that. It's like, why do you need that? Once you cut out the middleman enough, and it's just people who actually add value are being compensated rather than people who just monetize or monopolize a certain corner of the market. And that's what it has been previously, is how well can you hold on to that by monopolizing it rather than how well can you add value. And the good thing with Web3 and decentralized assets is that they prioritize and they reward the people that can add the most value. And it's very efficient, it's very effective, and it's on the blockchain, so it is true. It's there for everyone to see. And the key is, of course, there's devs and everyone's building and doing everything they need to do, and there's a lot of moving parts. But as long as you can ensure through verified, reputable auditors, insurance firms, cybersecurity firms, you have everything locked down. Once that's the question gets taken off the table. There's a lot of really good guys in this space that do wonderful work that are just dedicating their lives to ensuring that people's assets are secure. And once that's probably one of the biggest things for people to get over is people think that it's got this idea that, everyone gets hacked. It's full of cyber criminals. It's this, it's that, it's terrorists, whatever it is. But at some point you realize like this is a lot more secure as a space than a lot of the Web2 stuff. And the other thing is you only need to look at, like, in the US right now, banks hold a 0% reserve requirement. They don't hold your assets in the bank anymore. Like there's nothing in there. There's nothing. It's just all lent out, leveraged to their other clients. So if there's a run on the banks, you better hope that they honor the FDIC insurance of 250 grand or whatever they cover, because if they don't, it's not your money, it's the bank's money. And that's the thing here is Bitcoin, all these companies, they allow people to take back control of their wealth. And that's what it's all about. Like, you already dedicate your life to working for someone else. The last thing you should want to do is give that money away to someone else to look after for you.
Right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And that's an interesting perspective. I mean, you touched on the fact that your money is much safer in cryptocurrency, but you're also an auditing company, so you're offering that security. Now, there's a big debate within the industry as to whether we need more regulation, which a lot of the Western countries are moving towards, and some of them almost making it impossible for you to actually utilize decentralized cryptocurrency. And what we're trying to do with the soft note is to keep Bitcoin decentralized. But on the other side of things, there's the argument that, well, we don't actually need regulation in the way that these countries are advocating. We just need better auditors. We need more consistent auditing. And people should be held responsible for making an informed decision about the cryptocurrencies that they use, but having that informed by auditing companies rather than having the government hold their hand and control what they can and can't do with their finances on the basis of regulation. Now, what's your perspective on that debate, and where do you think the future is going to go regarding that?
Well, I can obviously speak from two perspectives, from Re's perspective and from my own personal perspective. Just as a blanket approach, quite frankly, you only need to ask yourself, how much has the government helped you? Has everything that centralized authorities touched turned to gold, or has everything they've touched deteriorated over time? They've had the opportunity with fiat currency. They were given an asset that once was backed by hard assets, things that preserve wealth, and they gradually ate into that because of their own desire for greed and over financialization and lining their own pockets. So then you just get this situation where anytime power is concentrated in the hands of a few, it destroys over time. It will erode the value of that asset. It's just inevitable because interests are not diversified and distributed throughout the entire community. They're diversified and distributed across a select few. So yes, if you're interested in retaining your wealth and doing all the things that Bitcoin exists and was created for, then decentralization is the only way. Allowing this to become a centralized asset and allowing the entire DeFi space, the entire crypto space to become a centralized, regulated industry, what's the point of having it in the first place? That's my question. It doesn't serve. The whole purpose was to reduce the need for middlemen, reduce the need for monopolization, reduce centralization. And then if we're doing that again now, just so that we can, what are we trying to, the whole purpose was to move away from these people. And now we're going back to them. Doesn't really add up. So like you said, yes, with the right auditors, with the right insurance firms. And that's the thing is, people run off a reputation. Business is all about reputation. It's about friendships, reputation, and trust. One of the reasons why blockchain works so well is because it ensures trust. That's why the blockchain is so good. It's transparent. And yes, that has its downside in a way where everyone can see everything, but it's all rather anonymous. And you have an opportunity where trust is ensured. It's immutable. Everything that is said and done is evident for everyone to look at. So the issue here is ensuring that the right business, and that's just a free market, realistically. If you have a business that's performing well, providing value, servicing numerous clients across the globe, leaving happy customers, building relationships, adding value, nurturing where they need to, that's going to last, and it always sustains. And just like a friendship, if you have a friend that's out there helping you, that's all a business is. It's an organization. Re is a DAO. Obviously, our interests are in serving as many of our customers as possible, ensuring that people do remain protected against all the fluctuations and the volatility of not just crypto, but the broader macroeconomic scene, which is, as we come into this climate, like crypto volatility. And it's not so much as before that I was suggesting or alluding to the fact that crypto is a safer option than holding assets in the bank. It's more so that there is that aspect that people always need to be aware of. Nothing is cut and dry, nothing's certain. Bitcoin is obviously volatile. There's a lot of vested interests that probably wouldn't like to see Bitcoin as a global reserve currency or something even close to that, because of course it would threaten their own, their own streams of revenue and their own power and their own control. So ideally, yes, we need to keep things as decentralized as possible if people want to have sovereignty and freedom restored to their lives, to their work life, to their financial standing, pretty much anything they've invested their energy in throughout time. And if they're interested in restoring that, then it needs to stay decentralized. And projects that are supporting that need to be, appreciated and contributed to as much as possible. People talk about a new world order. Well, the thing is, it can go both ways. There's a fork here, and it can either go back to a centralized, tyrannical, highly governed environment, or it can move forwards to a slightly more free market system where people are having the liberty to go about and trust. And the great thing with blockchain is it allows people to trust each other, whether they know them or not, because people are invested in ensuring that the system works, whether it's proof of stake or, like you guys said, proof of utility, even better. So yeah, I really can't see the need for more centralization. I think it's akin to just, we're solving a problem here and then we're just going back to the dark ages. It doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Right. And yeah, very interesting point, because there are people that stand on both sides of the argument between auditing, regulation, and a mixture between the two. But I think we're seeing this divide, at least from a jurisdiction-based perspective, between countries and their approach to Bitcoin. So especially within the West, you're seeing a lot of countries really pushing for regulation. It seems to correlate with how well Bitcoin is doing, and as you state, how much it is becoming a threat to the fiat currencies. But you're also seeing a lot of countries that may have been considered as developing countries or up and up-and-coming economies such as El Salvador, such as Argentina, and some of the smaller islands that have been very pro-Bitcoin in regards to its regulation and also in regards to taxation. Now, do you think there is going to be that divide, or do you think the countries that are more regulation-oriented are just going to have to get on board with allowing people to utilize decentralized Bitcoin?
Yeah, look, this is obviously it's a fantastic question in general. It's very, very deep and it's very broad in terms of the way things can go. But realistically, it won't instantly unify around Bitcoin. The world won't, no global centralized authority is going to be interested in relinquishing their stronghold on global energy, which is essentially money or fiat currency. And they're not going to relinquish that to be able to hand control over to a bunch of people across the world who just want to live their own lives freely. So you're going to have countries, smaller countries. El Salvador, for example, was one of the most, civil war, like just infighting ravaged countries for many decades. And they've seen a massive turnaround. I got the amount of people I've spoken to in the last couple of months that are moving to El Salvador or going to try out living down there. It's fascinating. And it all often comes down to your money, right? Like when your money is valuable, it's incredible how well a country does when the wealth that people work for, it's just energy. So when people are sacrificing their energy to earn that, and it's protected and it's deflationary and it retains its value, and when you go to pay for something at the checkout, it's worth what it was or more than when you earned it. That's really valuable, and it goes a long way to ensuring a country's stability for a period of time. Now, there's going to be countries like Singapore has been on and off, obviously El Salvador, Costa Rica, lots of South American countries. They will always try and capitalize on that divide, but like anything, there's always left and right. Like there's light and dark. There will never be that unity, and quite frankly, with that unity, you don't have balance necessarily. So balance and unity is sort of consistent. A state of homeostasis is achieved when you have both sides, right? You need light, you need dark. Yeah. That balance is good in a way, right? So it's always going, that's what creates a market. Without sellers, you don't have buyers, and without buyers, vice versa. So it's going to be always that struggle. I don't think people will even consider moving to crypto as there won't be more people using crypto than there are people using fiat until the fiat system completely collapses. And if it does so collapse, or if there is some hyperinflationary event with the US dollar, then that completely changes the playing field. But in the current state, I think you'll still see smaller nation states, slightly more sovereign autonomous territories, capitalizing on the opportunity to attract young digital nomads, to attract people that are in the crypto space, to attract that wealth, because realistically they needed an opportunity and they have that opportunity. And what it does do is it gives people an opportunity to look at their lives and go, hey, I'm here in New York or LA or wherever in the US or Australia or UK or anywhere like that, and think I want to go to an island somewhere and start again. And it's helping people reconnect with their roots. Like, people forget a lot of that.
Yeah, it's very interesting there because for myself, like I went deep down the rabbit hole many years ago looking at monetary history there. So, I mean,
Yes.
what you're saying to me there is aligns to everything I was studying.
Yeah.
As far back as records came there, people always were able to transact with one another. They were always able to trust one another.
Yes.
And every time there was some kind of fiat currency, it always would be debased in some shape or form there. And one of the interesting stories was, going right back to the Athenians, when they were using silver coins. Silver was a very stable currency in which people knew you couldn't print it, you couldn't create it out of thin air, and it stood the test of time until some clever individual decided to melt a different alloy into silver. And even though it took 500 years in order for it to be completely debased, it always, once you start that procedure, it always ends up with the currency reverting back to its intrinsic value, which is zero. And I think it's something like 6,000 currencies at the moment are where there's 6,000 currencies and all of them have reverted back to zero there. So I'm the same as you there, and it's completely different now. It's amazing the age we're in right now because we are seeing a huge transition there. Like Bitcoin is the granddaddy of them all, and it is just a matter of time. And you touched up on smaller countries in which they're seeing it. You know, they're realizing that, well, why would I trade in something that inflates every year 20-30% whenever I can use Bitcoin? And so on and so forth, though. So very, very interesting perspectives, and really appreciate that.
No worries at all. No worries at all. I appreciate what you guys are doing. It's we're glad to be able to help shine a light
Yeah.
on that, and hopefully, yeah, working together with firms like yourselves into the future is something that we're always 100% focused on here. Without that, it just takes a few people to come together, quite frankly, a strong community with vested interests and mutual goals to be able to create massive change. And yeah, that's what we're all about.
Yeah,
That's what everyone should be
absolutely.
about, quite frankly.
Indeed, indeed. And you raised the issue of El Salvador. And what we tried to do with the soft node is to overcome all the drawbacks of the Lightning Network. So the discussion we've just had is about ensuring that decentralization is there, but also usability to ensure that Bitcoin is actually scalable. And one of the issues that the El Salvadorian government experienced as soon as they tried to move over to Bitcoin and utilize the Lightning Network was that the Lightning Network requires channels to be set up, and then the Bitcoin is then constrained to that channel. And as soon as you want to move over to another recipient, you've got to close that channel, settle on the native Bitcoin blockchain, and open a new channel. Now, one of the problems with that is that very issue of scalability. So the soft node particularly is designed to be user agnostic because everything functions on the change of that passcode. That passcode predicates ownership, and therefore theoretically, the blockchain doesn't know who the owner is, so there are absolutely no restrictions. So that leads me back to the reason why this time around, as we're running the speed test, we are going to be testing soft node transactions rather than tokens that are running on the Tectum blockchain. So here's the interface for our node, and I will run everybody through all the different metrics that you can see here and how they're representing the change of passcode on the Tectum blockchain. So of course, we've got transactions per second. Our devs have put together an interface to pull the data instantly from the blockchain and demonstrate it in these visuals. And just to note, approximately an hour after we run these tests, we are going to enable all of the community to have access to this link. We have minted thousands and thousands of soft notes in different currencies for the purpose of this test, and the community will be able to access this through their Tectum login credentials and process some of these transactions themselves so that they can see the speed, and of course they can check the blockchain explorer to see that all of these transactions have recorded. So the first visual is the transactions per second visual. The second is the total transactions. We're going to push about 50 million transactions through the space of about 20 seconds to see what we can get the blockchain to function as. And now remember, previously when we ran this test, we were transacting Tectum tokens or a replica of Tectum tokens. This time we're changing the passcodes for thousands of soft nodes to see how quickly this can be done. Now, when we analyzed our metrics, we came to the conclusion that if all of the world's currency systems, including fiat currencies that would utilize softnode as a medium of exchange to go from one fiat currency to another, including all the cryptocurrency transactions and all of the elements that are required to underpin even domestic currency transactions were to be processed on one blockchain, that blockchain would need to get to about 2.5 million transactions per second. So that, of course, is a bar that we're going to be working towards, and it's something that we're aiming for. But theoretically speaking, depending on the transactions per speed that we can demonstrate, the Tectum blockchain could be sufficient to host all financial transactions for all industries and purposes across the world. So the total transactions will be displaying in this window. Then we've got transactions dynamics. So we've set up 8 particular nodes to run these transactions to demonstrate optimal viability, and we've named them on the basis of different cryptocurrencies. So don't be confused by the actual names. We are not transacting these different cryptocurrencies, but they're actually names of the nodes. And when we last tested it, the BTC node, ironically enough, is running as the fastest, but we've got those 8 nodes there. Now, the node data growth is basically going to represent which nodes are seen as the master nodes and the elect nodes within the consensus mechanism. Now, that is getting a little bit technological, but for those of you that have read the white paper, that one of the elements of security in the consensus mechanism is the elect node is elected every 200 milliseconds and then switches out. And it is the elect node that proposes the transaction to all of the master nodes. That's adds security, because then it can only be one node that can process transactions for a short period of time. Therefore, if you do have a bad actor or node attempting to propose fraudulent transactions, they only have a short period of time in which they can propose those. And then the final result, the final visual that you'll see is the final result of forming all circuits on each node. So that's the combined consensus between the differing nodes. So what we're going to do, rather than what we did last time, which was push through different batches of transactions, we're going to push through 50,000 plus transactions through all of these nodes to see how fast the blockchain can run using optimal hardware. We've got some of the best servers for running these nodes at the moment. And once we have done so, we will run a few of those tests to demonstrate that there's a consistency with regards to these transactions being processed. And then we will open it up in about an hour to the community so that they can process these transactions, and then they can also go into the Explorer to have a look at the record of these transactions being processed. So this is the moment we've been waiting for. We will execute approximately 50,000 transactions, 50 million transactions, and see what TPS the blockchain runs at. So the transactions are currently being pushed through. That's 15 million, 20 million, 30 million transactions, 40 million transactions, 51 million transactions were pushed through. So that's 51 million transactions that were pushed through all 8 nodes, and they reached a transaction rate per second of 3.5 million transactions. So that is much higher than the transaction rate per second that we ran on our last test. This is, of course, the changes of passcodes for the soft notes, but this demonstrates that the blockchain, utilizing optimal hardware, has the capacity to run at 3.5 million transactions per second. Now, up until this date, all of our public tests have only demonstrated 1.3 million transactions per second. But on the basis of optimal hardware and the soft note passcode changes, we've been able to hit 3.5 million transactions per second. So to run you through some of these metrics, you can see that the node that we've called the Bitcoin node, through that whole process, proposed 453,000 transactions per second. 450,000 transactions. The ETH node, 360,000. TRX, 280,000. Sol, 486,000. XRP, 504,000. And BNB was 493,000. And then the 9th node, APT, was slightly lower, and then a curve back up. The 7th, and a curve back up for the 8th node. So total transactions was 51 million all in all. And you can see the breakdown of the differing nodes there. So Trevor, what are your thoughts on the TPS attained there?
Well, that's amazing. We were hoping for what, 1.8 to 1.9 million, hoping to crack 2 million there, but I guess with the servers that we're running on there, 3.5 million is an absolute bat out of the park there. So well done on that. Absolutely well done.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we stated, it needed to be over 2 million on the basis of the metrics that we've been collating to sustain the world's transacting requirements for TPS. That's including fiat currency, cross-border remittances, and cryptocurrencies. So utilizing optimal hardware, the Tectum blockchain was able to get to 3.5 million transactions per second. But in order to demonstrate that that wasn't just a one-off or somewhat of an anomaly, we will run that test again. Again, we're going to push 50 plus million transactions through, and we will see how the nodes operate with those. So this time we're at 10 million transactions, 20 million transactions, 30 million, 40 million, 50 million, or 47 million this time around. And the speed has dropped off somewhat there. And of course, with so many transactions being pushed through, there is a varying rate with regards to the speed that it comes through. But to demonstrate that it wasn't an anomaly, the blockchain has then recorded more than 3 million transactions per second as a consistent rate. And there's a slight variation in the curve on the transaction dynamics. Now, it's important to note that in comparison to all other blockchains, the Tectum blockchain introduces and functions with a novel hashing algorithm. That hashing algorithm means that every transaction is hashed, placed into a new transaction, and only part of the information is recorded on the blockchain, and that's the information that differs from one transaction to another. So all the relevant data is recorded, enough for each node to constitute the information it requires to complete that block, but that also means that one block is written per transaction. So there are numerous blockchains that have come out recently that have spoken about the fact that they're writing a high block per second number. Now, the Tectum blockchain writes the same amount of blocks as it does transactions, so you get instant immutability. Now, the second thing to note is the Tectum blockchain doesn't employ sharding, and there are numerous blockchains that have implemented sharding. There's one recently that has a claim of 8 million transactions per second, which it does seem to achieve, but that's purely on the basis of running numerous shards, but each shard only runs at 1,000 transactions per second. We are running, in those terms, only one shard. We are running one blockchain, and therefore the Tectum blockchain doesn't split into numerous shards. Thus, the instant immutability is there. So what we'll do is we'll run the final test to ensure that we've got 3 results that are over 3 million transactions per second. And then after that, we'll have a discussion and also hand it over to the community within the next couple of hours so that the community can run their tests as well. So we're now at 20 million transactions, 40 million. And the system has pushed through 50,487,000 transactions. And the speed is slightly higher this time around. That's 3.1 million transactions per second on a consistent basis. So we've done 3 tests there, all of them with a result of over 3 million transactions per second, a differing amount of elect node transactions for those that are interested in the consensus mechanism protocol. And you can also see the breakdown of those nodes and the speed that they've been running at. So even if there are nodes that are running at suboptimal or sub-consensus speed in comparison to the other nodes, the system, as it relates to softnotes, is enabled to run 3.1 million transactions per second. And those are reaching full consensus. You're able to go and check on the Blockchain Explorer to make sure that they have been processed, and also instant immutability. So thanks everybody for joining in. That is the actual test completed. I would love to get your feedback on that, Zan, and your thoughts, Trevor, but we were able to get to over 3 million transactions per second in changing those softnote passcodes, which theoretically means Bitcoin can be completely decentralized, completely trustless, and also handle over 3 million transactions per second via the use of softnote.
Yeah, it's exceptional. You guys have done a wonderful job. Goes a long way towards making Bitcoin something that everyone can use across the globe for far more than just, sending to their mates as a form of remittances, if you will. So yeah, it's exceptional. Do you guys see this as being something you can take past 3.5 million?
I believe so. I believe 3 million. We were thinking there we could get up to that point, and we have there. There is mechanisms in place where we can offer sharding. So obviously, once we can offer sharding, then it'll surpass 3 million by a long mile there. But That's something that's very much in the pipework. We wanted to make sure that we could get the throughput as we could with the bigger servers. So but yeah, that there could be something on the pipeline for later on.
Fantastic. What is the roadmap look like for time for Tectum over the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, good question there. The roadmap for Tectum there. Basically, we are for this year, it's going to be a big thing to get the blockchain fully public, running on a fully public. That's going to be touched on over the next couple of months, as well as, of course, the market is now, it's earlier than expected, but it's nice to have the market where it is there. But we will be rolling the mass adoption campaign over the next couple of months there, so that we can get more adoption, more education on what softnotes can bring. And we'll probably be offering that to the countries in which, as you say, they're using Bitcoin there to buy apples, oranges, just to try and make a living out of it there. So if we can reach out to them and give them an application that's not going to charge them the world, then we'll utilize that and bring it up higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, well, that's all from us. I want to really thank you, Zan, for joining us there for our live test. And I'd like to I'd like to thank everybody for joining us as well there, and really stoked at the fact we hit 3 million events per second there, and over it there. So thanks everybody there, and we'll be keeping in touch there, and yeah, definitely watch this space there. And again, 2024 is going to be just one of those years for the record books, internally in the markets, and of course externally with what's going on in the world at the minute there. But we're all there, and that's it from myself.
Absolutely. And just as a note, you can now go on the Blockchain Explorer and see all of those transactions that have been pushed through. And you can see the speeds that were met and the variance between the different transactions. But likewise, would love to thank everybody that joined in, everybody that has supported us up until now. And of course, going back to what you're saying, Zan, our roadmap includes the expansion into countries such as El Salvador, but demonstrating that we can achieve the speeds that have been claimed and the speeds that are required in order to underpin the world's transacting system has been important from our side. So it's great to have you on board. Looking forward to doing more with UnoRe, especially from an auditing and insurance perspective, and a great fan of what you're doing as well.
No, likewise, it's mutual. And congratulations, guys, on the what I imagine is officially a world record for you. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we can work together moving forwards. And yeah, we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Very brief.